welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I'm Lori, and I have been posting a lot of videos about the Advent Book Exchange this month, but I did want to check in and talk to you about a combination today of what I hauled in November and what I read in November, and both of these lists are fairly small. Now, you may remember I posted a video in November about the fact that I was in a reading slump, and I'm sort of out of it, but not quite. I'm not back to my regular reading habits. Let me take my glasses off because it's probably too much. I'm not back. I'm better. I'm improving, but I'm not back. I'd love to figure out what will jumpstart me forward, and there were a couple of opportunities that I had that were unexpected that I did get some reading done this month. I am working on a couple of books so that I didn't finish in November, one of which I knew I wouldn't, and the other that I started after the chapter try and thought I might, but I didn't finish it. I'm about halfway through. So let's talk about that first, and then I'll talk about what I hauled in November. I'm very proud of myself. Very proud of myself. So in the month of November, I finished He Said, She Said, a novel by Erin Kelly, and I'm trying to remember how I acquired that. I totally don't know. I must have purchased it. It's not a NetGalley read that I can tell, and it was on my Kindle. So anyway, He Said, She Said, Erin Kelly. It's a story of a couple who meet because they're both watching a total eclipse, and then they become eclipse watchers together. And when they're at a particular eclipse, they witness a crime being committed, a sexual assault being committed against a woman, and she actually stumbles upon it and sees this man and this woman in this tent, and she reports it, or has her then fiance, I think, report it. And what unfolds after that is pretty interesting. It took me a while to finish it. I started it in October. I started it on October 18th, I think, 16th, and finished it the very 1st of November. So it was one that I read while I was gone on the trip, and I had sometimes a little bit of trouble sticking with it, but I did like it, and I gave it 4 stars. I recommend it. I was surprised by some of the twists and turns. I would call it a psychological thriller for sure. Sexual assault, trigger warnings, definitely not for people who are uncomfortable with that subject matter. Never read anything before by Erin Kelly, so she was a new author to me, and I'm curious to see what other novels she's written. Then I picked up again and finished Caraval by Stephanie Garber, which was one of my top 9 in 2019 to read. It was on my fall reading list because I wanted to try to wrap those up, and I really did enjoy it. I had a little trouble getting into that the first time I picked it up, and so I put it down for a bit and then picked it up again and was kind of just determined. So I did a combination of listening to it and reading it on ebook, and I liked it a lot. I've heard some mixed reviews about the sequel, and there's 3 in the trilogy now. I think 1 just came out not long ago. I think I'm going to give it a try, though. I think I'm going to try book number 2, which is Legendary, probably next year. I don't want to wait too long because I don't want to forget some of the things that happened. But great fantasy. I'm not sure if it's billed as young adult or not, but I would say it's nothing particularly, it's gory at times, but not too adult in content, I would say. Let me check and see if it is young adult. Yes, young adult. Well done. It wasn't a 5-star read for me, and I know it is for a lot of people, but it was a 4. I highly recommend it, and I'm interested enough in the characters and in the story and the magical realism aspect of it to move on to the next one. It follows 2 sisters, one of whom is really interested in getting a ticket to Caraval, which is this event that's put on by this man named Legend, and he at one time had a pretty big following, and then someone died, and it's very complicated. Anyway, it's kind of hard to get a ticket, and you have to be invited and sent a ticket by Legend himself. And so she keeps writing and writing and writing and writing. And just after she's become engaged to be married, he writes back and says he'd love to have her and her sister be his guest at Caraval. And so some things unfold, and her sister goes missing. And so the main character, whose name is Scarlet Dragna, the main character, takes off on an adventure in this fantasy world to find her sister. I really think it would make a great film. When I was reading it, I could imagine, I was watching it in my head and could imagine how beautifully it could be produced if given the right producer and director and circumstances. Fun, interesting, glad I read it. I was worried for a while that I wasn't going to finish it, but I did, and I'm excited that I did. So the books I acquired in the month of November are all three centered around a book festival that we had in our community. It was the Homegrown Literary and Arts Exchange. I got a little notebook as a result of attending, and it was our inaugural event. I think it's going to be a yearly event, and it was very lovely. So they had a lot of arts illustrated opportunities for kids to come in and draw and paint and create illustrations for novels. They had some workshops on children's novel illustrations. They had some workshops on writing in various ways and different genres, and it was just fantastic. And they had some authors there that were pretty amazing. I had been looking at this book for a while. It had been on my wish list for a bit, and it's called Where the Angels Lived by Margaret McMullen, who is a local author to me, although she's not originally from this area. And this is a memoir that she wrote about the discovery, while she was on a trip to Israel, the discovery that she had an uncle that she never knew about. Her mother thought that she was the last kind of person to carry on that family name. And when she went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel and she put her family name into the database, his name came up. The woman there at the museum then said, no one has ever searched this person before. So she handed her this form and said, so he now belongs to you. You need to find out his story. So this is the memoir of her journey to discover more about her uncle Richard, what happened to him, how he was treated during the Holocaust, and what the circumstances were that caused her not to know that he existed. It unfolds in a very fantastic way that leads her actually not only to this initial discovery of her uncle, but also leads her to Budapest, where I lived for a time. So that was interesting to me for her and I to talk about a little bit, and to just a huge discovery of the tragedies that occurred to bring him to this particular place. Loved her talk. Can't wait to read this book. I think I'm going to love it. And because I loved her talk so much, I also picked up, and I was pretty sure, I actually asked permission of Megan to buy this one. I didn't ask her permission to buy this one, but I don't think this was in her purview. But God help me if I open this one day this month on a Advent Book Exchange. But this one is called In My Mother's House, which is a novel, but it is also set in World War II, and it is the story of daughter's obsession to understand her mother's commitment to silence about their family's experiences during World War II in Vienna. And this one has a connection to Vienna as well. So the story of Elizabeth and her mother Jenny is remarkable for the fullness of detail, the pieces of family silver the grandmother mails to Jenny piece by piece over the years, her vivid memories of her uncle's viola d'amore lessons, the smell of the wood floors in the family's Vienna home. It's an emotional story of what is inherited from one generation to the next. I can't imagine that this won't be wonderful. Talking to her, listening to her, reading a little bit of this, reading a little bit of this. Like, I picked it up, I bought it because of the first sentence of the novel, actually, while I was standing there looking at it, which was, have you ever heard anyone play a viola d'amore? If you play it right, if you can play it the way Uncle Rudy sometimes could, you can feel the sounds echo in the back of your throat. I don't think I ever really told you about my Uncle Rudy. He could make extraordinary music. And then it goes on, but I just think, yeah, this is going to be good. So I picked both of those up, had a lovely luncheon conversation with Margaret. Can't wait to see more of her and to read more of her work. Then we had a culmination at the end of the night with a Q&A and a conversation with Jesmyn Ward. You've seen this on another video, but I acquired a copy of Sing Unburied Sing from my library to be able to have that signed there at that event and to, just briefly meet her, which we all did get to do. She was lovely. I can't wait to read this book as well. She did sign with respect, which is such a nice thing to say. And she has a beautiful smile, a great personality, a very kind and willing spirit. And I have heard that this, her second National Book Award-winning novel, is fantastic. So much loved by my daughter Megan that she gave me another copy for the holiday book exchange. So I'm giving that copy away. So look at day 2 of the holiday book exchange giveaway to find out how you could win that copy that I got from the library and or from Megan at the Advent Book Exchange. And this one I will treasure always because I got to speak to her for a few moments and she was able to inscribe that copy for me. So those 3 are probably going to show up on my 2020 TBRs for certain. So I think I did pretty well. I only read 2 books this month. That is not normal for me, obviously, but I did acquire only 3 books in anticipation of acquiring 25 this month. I'm reading The Stand by Stephen King currently. I started that in October. Yeah. And it is long, as you know. I've said that before. It's very long. So I'm about 350 pages in. I think it's not a lot. Again, a reading slump, but I actually did read a good bit more over the Thanksgiving break because I was helping care for my granddaughter. And so I had lots of time spent. She was sick with the flu. So I had lots of time I could just kind of stay with her, be with her in her sick bed while she binge watched TV. And I got to read a little bit and kind of am now getting really connected to those characters. At first, it was a little hard for me to keep track of them all and keep track of where they were. And now I'm just like, yeah, maybe I don't know who that is, but let's just see what happens. I think it'll be better, though, if I can read it regularly. I started We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter. I'm about halfway through that. I'm listening and reading the hard copy. I'm trying to take an iPad break at night because I think it becomes a habit for me to pick it up and read it in the middle of the night. And I'm pretty sure that's disruptive to my brain and to my sleep. So I'm trying to just read the hard copy of that when I have moments or listen to it on Scribd. I was able to find the audio version on Scribd, and I can access the ebook version if I decide I want to do that for the times that I'm not in bed and asleep or trying to sleep. So I do like that. It's not pulling me in, but then again, nothing really is pulling me in right now. So I maybe just, I'm in a slump. I don't know what the reason for that is, but I am clearly in a slump. I am, though, excited about reading, and I want to read all of the books again, which for a couple of weeks I just couldn't even kind of identify anything that I really was excited about. But now that's starting to change. So I'm happy about that. So I think December will be a good month. Traveling a bit, work maybe won't be quite so crazy around the holiday week, and I just think I'll be able to find some opportunities to read more than I did last month. I've already hit my Goodreads goal, so that's not a concern for me. The only push I have underneath all of this is the top 9 in 2019. I'm not likely going to finish that goal. So I'll just kind of figure out where I am on that at the end of the year. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep plugging along and see what happens. So I hope you read some good things in the month of November. I hope you enjoyed some great books in that month and that you hauled some wonderful things too. I'd love to hear about them in the comments below if you so choose to let me know about them. Thanks again for watching, your support, your comments, all of the things that you do. And as always, happy reading. Bye.